She walked into the cafe with trembling hands, her little boy clutching her dress. It wasn't supposed to be this way, blind dates didn't come with children. When she whispered an apology, bracing for judgment, the man across the table simply smiled and said words she'd never forget. That moment would change not only her life, but her son's future forever. Emily Carter wasn't just nervous, she was terrified. It had been years since she last agreed to a date, and even then, she never thought she'd find herself here, dressed in her one decent blouse, sitting in the corner of a warm little cafe in downtown Chicago, hoping she didn't look as desperate as she felt. But life hadn't been kind. The past 6 years had been an endless battle of rent notices, overdue bills, and nights where she sacrificed her own meals so her son, Jacob, wouldn't go hungry. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was supposed to be a chance to meet someone who might see her as more than just a struggling single mom working 2 jobs. But fate, as usual, had other plans. Because Jacob was sitting right there beside her, fidgeting with the sugar packets on the table. Her babysitter had cancelled last minute, and Emily couldn't afford to reschedule the date. It had taken courage just to say yes to begin with. So, here she was, trapped in the kind of nightmare scenario that made other women laugh over wine glasses, a blind date with a child in tow. When the tall, broad-shouldered man in a tailored gray suit walked through the door, she knew instantly it was him. He scanned the room with a confidence that made her sink deeper into her chair. When his eyes found hers, she forced a smile. He walked over, extended his hand, and said warmly, "Hi, I'm Daniel." Emily's cheeks burned. She gestured awkwardly toward Jacob, who now had sugar spilled across the table. I'm sorry," she stammered, her voice barely steady. "This is Jacob, my son. I didn't plan for this. I know it's unprofessional, bringing a child to a blind date. But I had no choice." She waited for the sigh, the polite excuse, the awkward exit. She had lived too many moments of rejection not to expect it. But Daniel didn't frown, didn't recoil, didn't even hesitate. He leaned forward, his smile softening, and said simply, "You don't need to apologize. If he's part of your life, then he's part of this evening too. Why don't we get Jacob something he likes before we talk?" Emily blinked, stunned into silence. No man had ever responded that way before. Jacob, shyly peeking up at Daniel, whispered, "Can I have hot chocolate?" Daniel chuckled. "Make it 2, he told the waitress. And just like that, the weight of the world seemed to lift from Emily's shoulders. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a burden, not as a failure, but as a woman who mattered. She didn't know then that this night would alter the course of her life forever. The hot chocolate arrived, topped with whipped cream and sprinkles. Jacob's delighted grin lit up the table, and Daniel laughed as the little boy ended up with whipped cream smeared across his nose. Emily felt her heart soften in ways she hadn't allowed in years. She hadn't come here expecting much. In fact, she almost cancelled 3 times before mustering the courage to show up. She had convinced herself that men like Daniel, the kind who wore suits that probably cost more than her monthly rent, didn't exist in her world. And if they did, they didn't care about women like her. But Daniel surprised her. He didn't just politely acknowledge Jacob, he asked him questions about his favorite superheroes, about his dreams, about what he wanted to be when he grew up. An astronaut, Jacob declared proudly, chocolate mustache and all. "But I don't like the dark." Daniel smiled thoughtfully. "That just means you're braver than most people. Being brave isn't about not being scared, it's about going forward anyway." Emily watched, captivated, as her son listened with wide eyes. No man had ever spoken to Jacob like that, not even his biological father who had left before Jacob could form his first memory. She found herself leaning in, curious. "So what do you do, Daniel?" she asked. His eyes flickered for a second, as though debating how much to reveal. "I work in business," he said vaguely. "I run a company." He didn't say he was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing firms in the Midwest, and Emily didn't push. For once, she wasn't focused on the resume or the paycheck. She was more intrigued by the way he made Jacob laugh, the way he spoke with humility despite his obvious success, the way he seemed to genuinely care about people. By the time dinner arrived, Emily had almost forgotten this was a blind date. It felt more like a family meal. Her and Jacob on one side, Daniel on the other, sharing food, stories, and laughter. For 2 hours, she forgot about overdue bills, the stress of her waitress shifts, and the gnawing fear of never being enough. She allowed herself to feel what she hadn't in years, hope. Yet as she gathered her things to leave, reality returned with a sting. Men like Daniel didn't stay. He would go back to his world of boardrooms and power, while she returned to her tiny apartment where the heat barely worked. She forced a polite smile and whispered, "Thank you for being so kind tonight. I know this wasn't what you signed up for." Daniel studied her carefully, his expression unreadable. Then he said, almost in a whisper, "Emily, maybe this is exactly what I needed." Days turned into weeks, and against all odds, Daniel kept calling. He didn't disappear, didn't vanish like the others had. He showed up. Sometimes it was as simple as bringing Emily coffee at the diner where she worked double shifts. Sometimes it was taking Jacob to the park so Emily could rest. Slowly, cautiously, she began to trust him. But there was always a wall. Emily lived with the constant fear of being left behind. Her past had taught her that promises often turn to dust, and she couldn't afford to let Jacob's heart break the way hers had. One evening, after Daniel had dropped them home, Emily sat by the window and whispered to herself, "Why is he still here?" The truth was, Daniel had secrets of his own. He wasn't just a businessman, he was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar firm, a man whose face occasionally appeared in financial magazines. He hadn't told her, not because he wanted to deceive, but because he wanted to be sure Emily liked him for who he was, not for his title. But secrets never stay hidden forever. One afternoon, while waiting tables, Emily overheard a group of businessmen in suits talking at the corner booth. They had a magazine open, and there on the glossy page was a photo she recognized instantly, Daniel. Her Daniel. The headline read, "The visionary CEO behind Carter Enterprises." Her heart pounded. She realized in an instant who he really was, and the weight of it nearly crushed her. When Daniel arrived later that night to take her and Jacob out for pizza, Emily's hands shook. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice breaking. Daniel froze. "Emily, you're a CEO. You're not supposed to be here with people like us. I'm a waitress. I live paycheck to paycheck. I brought my son on our first date because I couldn't afford a babysitter. Do you have any idea how foolish I feel?" Daniel's eyes softened. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it back. "Emily," he said quietly, "do you remember what I told you that first night? That you didn't need to apologize? I meant it. I don't care about where you work or how much money you make. I care about the way you've raised Jacob with love, the way you fight every single day even when life tries to break you. That's worth more than any title or paycheck I'll ever have." Tears blurred Emily's vision. For the first time, she realized he wasn't just being kind, he was being real. It wasn't easy. Emily fought every instinct to push him away. But Daniel was relentless in the gentlest way possible. He didn't try to rescue her, didn't try to buy her love with his wealth. Instead, he showed up in small, consistent ways. He helped Jacob with his homework. He fixed the leaky faucet in her apartment without making a show of it. He stood beside her, not above her. Slowly, the walls began to crumble. Emily started to believe she was worthy of the kind of love that didn't run, didn't abandon, didn't judge. Jacob, too, grew attached to Daniel, slipping his hand into his during walks, calling him "coach" when they played soccer at the park. One evening, after months of quiet dinners and laughter-filled weekends, Daniel took them both to the same cafe where it all began. The table was set with hot chocolate, extra whipped cream. Jacob giggled, remembering the night he'd made a mess of the sugar packets. Daniel turned to Emily, his eyes steady. "That night," he said softly, "when you apologized for bringing Jacob, I knew you were the woman I'd been searching for. Because you weren't just showing me who you are, you were showing me what love looks like. And I want to be part of that. Not as a visitor, but as family." Emily's breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes as Jacob looked up, confused but smiling. Daniel reached into his pocket, not for a flashy ring but for a small, simple one, and said, "Emily, will you let me stand beside you? Will you let me love you both, not as a CEO, not as someone trying to fix your life, but as a man who's finally found where he belongs?" For once, Emily didn't feel the urge to run, to protect herself from disappointment. She felt only peace. She nodded, whispering, "Yes." Jacob clapped his hands, laughing. "Does this mean I get two parents now?" Daniel pulled him into his arms. "It means you get a team. Forever." In that little cafe, the world didn't see a struggling single mom or a powerful CEO. It saw a family being born, built not on wealth or status, but on love that had been waiting all along. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Vibes for more powerful, life-changing stories. Tell us in the comments, what part of this story inspired you the most? Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next emotional journey of love, kindness, and second chances.